Well, they're still driving on the wrong side of the road. They can't pass the test. Anyway, it is 8:41 right now. Welcome back to CW Iowa Live. Lou and Jackie here, along with attorney Michael Jankins. He is here to discuss something, actually a follow-up, Michael, to something that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, last segment we talked about the difficulty of eliminating your student loans in a bankruptcy proceeding, and so we generally went over how difficult it was and some of the companies advertising how they can help you on this and that it's not a good idea to go to them. And we briefly discussed what the standard is, being an undue hardship that is what has to be proven to the bankruptcy court so that you would be able to discharge or get rid of your student loan debt. So, and we briefly discussed it's a very, very difficult standard to prove. Now, when I was discussing that the last time, the standard I had explained was really the majority viewpoint from around the country, but here in Iowa, we're in the 8th Circuit, and that covers Iowa, Nebraska, the Dakotas, Minnesota, Missouri, so this region of the country, we have a little bit different standard in one respect. They're calling it the totality of the circumstances standard. So unlike the majority of the country where they say, well, if you have programs available through the government that you could pay based on your income and you haven't taken advantage of those and tried, that by that alone you would not be able to show undue hardship on the student loan discharge. But in the 8th Circuit, they don't take that strict of an approach, and they look at a much broader picture, totality of the circumstances. So what I found very interesting is after 2 weeks ago when we gave that topic, a case had just been decided in the 8th Circuit Bankruptcy Appellate Panel involving a student loan. It was called In re Fern. A gal named Sarah Fern up in the Dubuque area challenged her student loans, and Judge Collins in the Northern District found in that case that there were sufficient circumstances using the standard here in the 8th Circuit that she would be able to discharge her student loans. The government appealed that to the appellate court, and the appellate court, 3-judge panel, also affirmed or agreed with the bankruptcy court, and so that decision stood. The judge that wrote that decision for the panel was Judge Anita Shodin, who's one of our bankruptcy judges here in Des Moines.
Okay.
So that, at least for folks here that practice in the Des Moines court, would be very relevant if trying to bring one of these cases in Des Moines.
Because you can reference this now.
Yeah, this is her decision. This is obviously her viewpoint on things. She was writing for the court, but she was in agreement with the rationale. And I found this case to be very interesting because in reading both the rationale of Judge Collins at the bankruptcy court as well as the appellate decision, it seems to have an opportunity to interpret the facts in different ways, and they seem to definitely interpret all of these things in favor of this gal that had filed the bankruptcy. This gal was 35 years old. Mm-hmm. She had 3 kids. I think the oldest was 16, and then she had a middle-aged child and then a child as young as 3, I believe. They looked at her work experience. She had been at the same job now for about 6 years, had never earned more than $25,000 a year. For taking care of 3 kids, that isn't such a great thing. And I think they said she was clearing about $1,500 a month, got some food stamps. Her mom had to help her out to pay for bills. So they really looked at that. They looked at her ability, or what her living expenses were, because that's one of the factors in all of the cases, whether we use the 8th Circuit standard or whether we use the majority approach at the other part of the country, to see if she's living within her means, if these are reasonable living expenses that she has.
Right.
And so after reading the appellate decision, I went back and got the actual decision by Judge Collins and read through that. It's more detailed. He lays out all the facts, and they don't get into quite as much detail in the appeal decision. But he analyzed all of these expenses, and in the actual bankruptcy, when you file, you have to list your living expenses.
Right.
And they went through one at a time, and the government, as the government so often does, said, oh, we think some of these are necessarily not so reasonable. And it was really, only the government would suggest that, oh, because a person has a cell phone, that would be unreasonable. And the court noted that she didn't have a landline phone, so it didn't really buy into the government's argument. And they were picking apart her little bit of living expenses, and the court just didn't believe the government was being very reasonable. She showed like no money left after her meager living expenses, and that's with even public subsidies helping her to survive. So the court evaluated all that, and the thing I found interesting was she's 35 years old, and you know, certainly that's a very young person, and they went into her college background. She started one course of study and didn't complete it, and fell short one course, and so never completed, I believe, an accounting degree. I'm assuming that it may have been a 2-year degree by virtue of the amount of the loans, because the total loans for that project that she was trying to get through was about $15,000 for that course of study. They analyzed it and said she went to college again, trying to improve herself to become something that I'm not familiar with, an anesthetist or esthetician. So I'm not sure what
Somebody
that
who
is.
does like facials and things like that with the skin.
And I was going to look it up to sound so I wouldn't sound dumb, but I just I'll just.
We got you
Jackie
covered.
knew, Jackie
We got you covered. We got you covered.
So how much total were her loans overall after going to school these couple of times?
$27,000, I believe, at the time that the court evaluated it, and
Which
they,
is a lot of money.
And when they were looking through it, they projected that in the next 15 to 20 years, how that would grow at the various interest rates and really not get anywhere. So the court pretty much said, look, you know, she could get into these programs that the government has, but you know, her earnings have been fairly stable at a low level. She testified that she's tried to get different work at different times, and there just wasn't work that she could get that was better, that would give her flexibility if she had to stay home with her kids when they were sick, and that she looked through the want ads and checked online, but that she hadn't looked recently, and you know, she's done what she could, and she said, if someone wants to give me a better paying job, I'll be happy to take it, but you know, she just hadn't found anything, and the court found her testimony to be pretty reasonable and believable. And they just looked forward and said, look, you know, she's going to be having to take care of the children over this, you know, she had no help from the fathers. Apparently there was a couple different dads involved, never got any child support.
Now, you mentioned the programs that she could get into to help pay these loans back.
Right.
And you said because of her income level and her current situation, that the amount of money that she would have owed could have been next to nothing.
Yeah, I mean, she,
You know, on a payment scale.
her payment under the income-based repayment program, which you discussed last time, that the government offers, and these aren't with private loans, these are only with the government loans, that they said, yes, she may be paying zero for many of the years, and even as time went on and the kids dropped off as far as her responsibility and reached the age of majority, and then said there'd be 2 kids and then down to 1, they said that if she even had to pay anything based on her expected earnings, it would be so little that it wouldn't even put a dent in these student loans, and so there'd be nothing accomplished.
It would continue to grow, right?
They'd continue to grow.
Right.
She'd never made a payment on these student loans either, which was kind of interesting because you know, these other courts look at a person's even attempts to pay, and the court just said even though she's never paid, they weren't going to use that as a factor to disqualify her from this undue hardship standard. And so to me, the court is really looking at a practical situation. I think it gives a lot more hope for people now that if they go into bankruptcy, that the courts will be sympathetic to somebody's circumstances. Now, it's not going to be a floodgate where just everybody's going to be eligible for this. This gal didn't get her degree, and the government tried to rely on another case that was out there where they denied the discharge of student loans. Well, it was a case that involved an attorney, a person who had a law degree and multiple other degrees, and they ended up ruling his weren't discharged, even though he wasn't earning lots of money and his loans would have been gigantic. But even in those cases, they said that he could have afforded to pay $600 a month.
Every case is a little different.
Every case turns on its own facts, and they got to be good facts.
Do you think this is a game changer when it comes to rulings?
Well, I think it is, because it really, the court is taking a sympathetic look at things. I mean, as I was looking at the facts of the case, I could have certainly seen other judges maybe looking at it in a little more strict sense, and potentially, well, possibly she could get remarried someday, there could be dual incomes, and she's young, so later on she might be able to earn more as her kids are in school full time, and she doesn't have to worry about coming home if they're sick.
Right.
But the interpretations were all done in the best light for her, which I think that's great, because for so many years it was almost impossible, and to me this seems to open up the door a little bit more so that people have a reasonable shot if they just have really unfortunate circumstances.
Can people request a certain judge to take a look at your case, or is it just assigned?
No, it's random.
It's
there's
random,
but there's only two. So, and I think both judges, our other judge as well as Judge Chodine, are very good judges.
Good.
And I think that this decision would be very important on how things go in the future.
Wonderful.
Very interesting. Well, if you have more questions, this is the man you need to talk to when it comes to bankruptcy, but especially now when it comes to student loans. And how can people find you, Michael?
You can call me at 255-1855, or you can find me at the internet at www.iowa-bankruptcylaw.com.
Great.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for the
Thank you.
follow-up on that. Interesting
Well, I thought
stuff.
it was important.
All right, it is 8:52. We will be right back. This is CW Iowa Live in West Des Moines.